Hello everybody and welcome to another video about the history of old First Division teams. In this video I'm going to be looking at the history of Arsenal, and of course as everybody knows, Arsenal won the Premier League. Let's start with Arsenal's history. They were at best mid-table in the 50s and 60s. They didn't have much to cheer about back then. And I've just looked it up, and I was surprised to find out that Billy Wright, the one and only great Billy Wright, who used to play for Wolverhampton Wanderers, he managed Arsenal in the 50s. Back then, Arsenal didn't achieve much, even in that decade. And Billy Wright was sacked, and he was replaced by Bertie McNee. And of course, he led Arsenal to win the double. When he took over, Arsenal then suddenly became a team that looked like they was going to challenge for cups and win the league. And they were in the League Cup final in 1968 when they played Leeds, and they lost to Leeds 1-0. And then the following year, in 1969, they were in the League Cup final again when they lost 3-2 to third division Swindon Town. Now that was a big cup shot back then. And at the time, playing for Arsenal was Bobby Gould. Now he went on to play for Wolves, and he also played for Albion. They lost those two league finals in 68 to Leeds and in 69 to Swindon Town. But it wasn't until the start of the 1970-71 season when they won the old First Division and they won the FA Cup. They did the double. They were the second team to do the double after Tottenham did it. Won it in the 1960-61 season. Then Arsenal starting to have a little bit of success. They were back at Wembley again the following year in 1972 in the FA Cup final, where they played Leeds United and they lost 1-0 to Leeds. Leeds beat them 1-0 to win the FA Cup. And then the following year, in 1973, they were almost reached Wembley again. But this time it was in the semi-finals of the FA Cup of that year, where Sunderland beat them 2-0. And everybody knows what happened after that. Sunderland won the FA Cup, didn't they? Beating Leeds 1-0. After that period, towards the late 70s, that's when things began to go a little bit wrong for Arsenal. After the success they had in the 70-71 season of doing the double, Bertie McNee was sacked, I don't know whether he was sacked or he resigned, one of the two anyway. And former player Terry Neal, he became manager of Arsenal, and he began to change the team. He signed different players. He signed Alan Ball, of all people. Yes, Alan Ball. They signed him from Everton, and also they signed Matt Jennings, a goalkeeper from Tottenham Hotspurs. And also they signed Malcolm McDonald from Newcastle United. It was in 1976. With the kind of players Arsenal had then, they really should have gone on to win the old First Division again, but they didn't for some reason. And like I've said, they should have won more trophies than they had the players. The players they had when they did the double, they had some great players. In goal was Bob Wilson and Pat Rice, Bob McNee, Frank McClintock, George Armstrong, uh, John Radford, George Graham, and of course Charlie George. We all remember Charlie George, don't we? He scored the winning goal in the 1971 FA Cup final when they beat Liverpool 2-1. Of course, his goal was scored in extra time. Arsenal were like so many other big name First Division teams back then in the 70s. They should have gone on to win, like I've said, more trophies. They should have won the old First Division again. They had the players. They could have, and they was also challenging for Europe. They were challenging for Europe when they did the double, and they should have won the European Cup. But unfortunately, they they it was beyond them. And of course, towards the end of the 70s, well, things began to change again when there was different players bought in. Arsenal bought different players in. Again, we had Frank Stapleton, Alan Sunderland. They bought Alan Sunderland from Wolves, and they were in the two FA Cup finals again. They was in FA Cup finals again in '78 when they lost to Ipswich, and again in 1979 they won the cup that year in '79, beating Manchester United 3-2. That was considered a classic final. Up until about 10 minutes towards the end of the match, everybody thought who was watching it on TV it was going to go into extra time and perhaps a replay. But then it suddenly exploded, the game did, into life, with Arsenal scoring first, then Manchester United scoring another 2 goals, and then we had Arsenal equalising, and at the very end we had a winner, and it was Arsenal, Alan Sunderland scoring the winning goal. And that was the end of the 70s, and we moved into the 80s. In that decade, Arsenal didn't have much to celebrate winning trophies. That decade, they didn't have much to celebrate. And in the 90s, in the 90s, but like I've said, towards the end of the 80s, they won the old First Division again. They beat Liverpool to win it, and that's the decade when they should, like the 70s, they should have won more trophies. And of course, they've just won the Premier League, and of course, and this weekend they'll be in the Champions League playing Paris Saint-Germain. Well, anyway, that's the end of this another video in the history of old First Division teams. I'll see you all again in another video.